Physical retaliation, student aggression, and all sorts of violence have been dynamically increasing in the past few years. But people like to make the pandemic of old this new scapegoat or excuse for student attitude and behavior worsening. Oh, these poor children, they're little mackin' teachers just because they are traumatized from the pandemic. These are moments where I want to shake someone yelling, "Doofus, they've been acting like this." And the proof is in everyday teachers such as us. Before the widespread scare of C-19, students were already on this proverbial behavioral decline as students disrespected, played unfunny pranks on teachers, and performed life-threatening acts that have consistently pushed teachers out of the profession. Just like how money magnifies a person's conduct and pattern and present mindset, that's what C-19 did to the overall educational system. It exposed infrastructural weaknesses and the poor operations of the American school system. It wasn't, oh, the pandemic creating these new problems. These dilemmas already existed. They were just magnified. So when little John was already snipping and making verbal threats in middle school to his teachers, the pandemic allowed him to take some time off and make good on those threats in 2021 and beyond. In this video, we will explore the story of Michelle Andrews, a teacher fired after being assaulted by a little John archetype. Let's watch. Michelle Andrews worked in the Bridgeton, New Jersey school district, preparing sixth graders for the next phase of middle school life. What Michelle thought would be a regular school day frighteningly transitioned into a traumatic experience that would haunt Michelle for the coming years of her teaching career. Class disruption has sadly become a norm in the American school system. Still, we are starting to see the dissolving of boundaries between student respect and teachers, with the pendulum of support swinging more in the students' favor. On what should have been a typical school day in 2015, a sixth grade student would choose violence when held accountable for their behavior. Like many teachers, Michelle Andrews approached this sixth grader to confront their behavior during instructional time respectfully. Offended, the student reared back, storing energy, ready in an attack, and launched at Miss Andrews' face, forcing her neck back, causing lifelong nerve damage for the 6-year New Jersey teacher. Looking for administrative support? As any logical educator in this situation would do, Michelle sought out her principal. Unfortunately for Michelle, sympathy and rallying would not be reciprocated. When she thought she would have a caring, understanding ally in the trenches of a battlefield, she soon discovered a maniacal megalomaniac at the head of her leadership. Put on your big girl panties and deal with it. Sincerely, your principal. Saddened and frustrated by the juvenile insult from what should have been her admin cheerleader, Michelle had no choice but to go around and above her administration when they failed to follow up and give appropriate consequences to the sixth grader. Michelle took direct legal action against the student who, surprise, surprise, kindled the wrath of her beloved principal. How dare she go after such an innocent child? Seems to have been the admin's reaction. To protect Bridgeton's brightest star pupil, Michelle's employer was left with only one option: termination. Michelle Andrews would soon be excused from her duties, making her 6 years in education up to that point seem like a distant memory. Increasingly frustrated, Michelle was now in a do-or-die position: preserve her career livelihood or succumb to the get-over-it demeanor of those against her. Mrs. Andrews would soon take swift legal action against the school board for their lack of protection. After suffering from her injuries, Michelle eventually settled in court with the district for $197,500. Michelle desired for it not to be this way, though. She wanted the Bridgeton school system to show her the same concern and support as she had been serving the New Jersey students for years. Here's what she had to say. Quote, "I didn't know if I even wanted to go back into teaching after all that. I felt like I couldn't trust the system. I couldn't trust my administrators. I was afraid if something like this happened again, how I would react, fight, or flight." End quote. The good news is that Michelle did not let this situation defeat her. Not only did she win a settlement, but she also had a renewed vigor to enter the classroom again, answering the calling that gave her purpose. She teaches in a private alternative school with smaller class sizes, better defined rules and procedures, and a team of administrators who adore her. I adapted this story from an Educational Week article titled, "When Students Assault Teachers, Effects Can Be Lasting." This article possessed some excellent key points regarding violence in the classroom. One of the things it said that I've been constantly reading about online and offline is that teachers do not get adequate training with dealing with violent situations. Quote, mainstream teachers rarely get training on how to de-escalate violence in the classroom, said one college professor at the University of Florida. Some of the training we give to special ed teachers, I think we need to give it to all teachers. Man, I find it's funny given that most of the school's general education population, the normal students across the US, are heavily identified with some sort of SPED feature. Another good point the article highlights is how a lack of administrative support can vastly strengthen a poorly behaved student's resolve to continue in the same corrosive behavior. Quote, if a teacher feels like an administrator has his or her back, this might send a signal. Teachers might feel more protected, cared for, and enabled by the school administration, said the University of Missouri professor Francis Huang. The students who victimize teachers might think, oh, I can't get away with this. It might be a deterrent. On the flip side, if teachers and students see that a principal won't back up a teacher when a student misbehaves, that might weaken the teacher and it might embolden the student at the same time. I will leave a link to the article in the description below so you can check it out, as well as I think it is very well written. I want to leave all the viewers with this thought. Education is big business. Like many of you, I've been frustrated with challenging students being sent back to the class even after committing some of the most heinous acts. But my anguish and disgust were soon calmed by remembering that all students are walking dollar signs. Whether they're Einstein-level performers or carry the IQ of a dung beetle, every student has the same amount bounty to them within that school district. And then when you throw in things like state testing, accountability, and student performance attached to the school funding, the picture becomes more transparent as to why student suspension is suspended as an option. When a student is not there to occupy a seat, the school stands in jeopardy of losing that money. Now, it would be nice if this wasn't the case, but that is not the world we live in. If certain students also brought in more money than others, then they would get the red carpet treatment. If they wanted to give teachers the Evander Holyfield ear treatment, that wouldn't be a problem as well. Let me give you an example. Let's say little Nick is an honor student. High test scores and other performative metrics that raised his monetary value from the base amount of $100 a day to $1,000 comparatively to underperforming Chad. Little Nick would get the red carpet treatment eventually. If one day little Nick got bored of his academic ascension, deciding to participate in delinquent behaviors that Chad has been engaged in throughout the school year, little Nick would quickly return to the room because he brings mucha moolah to his establishment. Again, this is a very fictitious and hypothetical scenario, but with things such as school choice on the rise and being adopted by many states, this is something that's definitely going to shift some money around. According to a PragerU video, school choice is a good thing working out for most states. Still, when I personally asked others, such as my wife, who has an extensive admin and general ed experience background, they don't think school choice will be good for districts long term. But I don't know. I've only heard about this policy since that PragerU video. If you know anything about school choice and how it has affected your district, positively or negatively, please leave a comment below, as I would love to hear about your experience. If students had better parental support and monitoring, a mother and father who instilled traditional morals into their children, many wouldn't feel like Floyd Mayweather to teachers. But today, we have kids raising kids, young teens becoming parents, not mentally ready for child rearing, and who is incredibly selfish. And I talk about how this type of parenting has caused hell for teachers right here in this video.